Okay, first of all, I should tell you my name is Connie Bolin. I am the founder, coordinator of Warbirds in Review. It has been my honor and my pleasure to present these programs to all of you and to recognize our veterans, aircraft owners, and all the people who make this possible and who have been a part of Warbirds in Review for 20 years. Colonel, thank you. And many of you here in the audience look very familiar. I thank you for your support over the years. Again, it has been my honor. And that song that Teresa just sang is very special to me because I reflect on the many, many friends that have shared this stage or been on the stairs or something similar when we started from very humble beginnings. There are a lot of those people who are no longer with us, but because of Warbirds in Review and what we've been able to do here through the production team of Sleeping Dog Productions in the last few years, those stories are recorded for history and they will not be lost. But that's because of what we do here and because of the support we get from all the people that make this possible. The support we get from Scott's Miracle-Gro Company, and today we're pleased to have Jim Hagedorn, the Scott's Miracle-Gro, voice of Scott's Miracle-Gro, and the owner of this old crow. So to Jim Hagedorn, Scott's Miracle-Gro, thank you for making all of this production level possible. To Ron and Diane Fagan, who provide us with a production room, which we will be using in a little different way today. Colonel Bud Anderson is healthy. He's had a little bit of challenge this past year with COVID and not wanting to be around a lot of people, being very, very careful. Colonel Anderson chose his family, actually. You know how sons and daughters are. They are very protective, as we all are. They chose to have us connect with Bud via Zoom today. All right, and there's Bud. Okay. So the run of show here is I'm going to introduce these two very special people. Well, actually, there's three of them that are very, very good friends of mine, and we'll go over the airplane information first. No, I didn't include Ray in that three, right? First, so we'll go over the airplanes a little bit and hear from these guys that are behind me now, and then I will move into the production room so that I can talk with Bud, and you will be able to see and hear him on the video from his home in California. So I'll tell you, this is Jim Hagedorn, Jack Roush, Ray Fowler. They will be on in just a few minutes, but first of all, we'd like to ask you to watch the introduction video, but I will also tell you that, again, through the generosity of Scott's Miracle-Gro Company, we have produced, Sleeping Dog Productions has produced a retrospective video of the past 20 years of Warbirds in Review, which we will be showing throughout the week. I hope you get a chance to catch that. So please direct your attention to the intro video.
In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, and by 1938, controlled most of China. During those same years, Hitler was building his war machine. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland. By 1941, Germany controlled Denmark and Norway, Belgium and Luxembourg, the Netherlands and France, Yugoslavia and Greece, and then invaded Russia. In 1940, the incredible British fought off the Germans in the air, the Battle of Britain. For many Americans then, the mood was to stay neutral, stay out of foreign wars. Of course, that was not to be. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. The next day, the United States declared war on Japan, and 3 days later, on Germany and Italy. Over the next 4 years, our country was transformed militarily, economically, and in the most human terms describable. It was the most widespread war in history. It's estimated that at least 75 million people died. By 1944, more than 2.5 million men and women were serving in the Army Air Corps. Over the course of the war, some 40,000 American airmen died. 18,000 went missing. 41,000 were captured. These numbers seem incomprehensible today. We and our allies in combat and at home paid huge personal prices to save the free world from oppression. Our veteran guest aviator this afternoon is a retired Air Force colonel. He flew Mustangs with the 357th Fighter Group out of Leiston, England, nicknamed the Yoxford Boys. He was a major at age 22, flying 2 tours, logging 116 missions over Europe. He was a Triple Ace with 16 1/4 air victories and is currently the ranking American living ace of World War II. After the war, he continued his career as a test pilot. His last assignment was commanding a tactical fighter wing in Vietnam.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, Jack Roush. Could you join us right here, Jack, please? Assigned seating. Jim Hagedorn, and Ray Fowler. I feel that these gentlemen do not need an introduction, but they have been here. Jack is the only person other than Bud Anderson who has been here for every program, I believe, for the last 20 years. So let me see. I think these guys threw a coin toss, and we said that Jim gets to start first and tell us a little bit about the current day flying of these aircraft. First of all, the Old Crow, the green Old Crow behind me.
The faux crow. That's not the real crow.
Okay. See, he's in control now. That's Jim Hagedorn. Okay, the faux crow behind me belongs to Jack Roush. The real Old Crow, the silver one, is Jim Hagedorn's D model aircraft, and the Gentleman Jim aircraft is also Jack's. These beautiful airplanes. Thank you for bringing them here, Jim. Let me know if you need me.
All right. Thanks. Hey, everybody. How are you doing? You know, it's all of us between you and Bud Anderson, so we'll try to go pretty quick. I guess my crow, when we started doing some NASCAR work at Scott's, and people said, "You want to meet Roush?" And I was like, okay. So I go up there, and he hands me a flight suit and says, "Let's go flying." And he puts me in his other airplane, his Gentleman Jim airplane, and which was the Glennis airplane, I guess, at the time. And I don't know this guy. I'm in the back seat. There's no controls. And
you're a Czech F-16 pilot. You're on your own.
Yeah, but next thing you know, we're down below the tree line, literally at V&E, pushing like 500 miles an hour. And I'm thinking to myself, what have you done, you idiot? And so Jack, I finally say, I got to have one of these. So it didn't have a bad effect on me. I got to have one. And he told me he'd sell me the Glennis airplane, which was kind of a more complete. I'm super happy with this airplane, better, I think. But he says, I'll sell it to you. But then he backed out.
I was going through a divorce. It was titled wrong.
Yeah, it was something about his divorce, and said, you'll have to buy the Old Crow. And I said, okay. And he came and interviewed me. Can you guys hear me okay? He came and interviewed me like I was interviewing for a job. And he spent a lot of time telling me that I'm a custodian, a steward of some very important American history.
You came to understand that.
Yep, absolutely. But he made me sign a contract that I would never change the name of the airplane without his permission. Now, he didn't tell me, while he did that, I'm building another phony Old Crow out of an old data plate he got down in Florida. And so he shows up with this, after like bending me over pretty hard, he then tells me like, oh, here's the new Crow. And I'm like, dude, that's some cheating. That's some low down, dirty, rotten stuff there. So he also made me go through a flight. Now, I was Air Force, F-16s, Embry-Riddle, flight instructor, all that stuff. And he made me go into like a training program where he said, look, I want you to start in the Cub, build tail wheel time. Then I want some heavy tail wheel time, 100 hours in a T6 or equivalent. And he said, I'll give you to use, as long as you don't wreck it, my T6, or what is the name you call them?
SNJ5.
SNJ5. And build 100 hours, and then you can go down and do Lee Louderback's course down in Kissimmee, and then you can take delivery of your airplane, which I did. So my last flight in the T6, or the SNJ5, I'm bringing it back up to Ypsilanti, where Jack lives. And, you know, there's no GPS in this thing. So it's like old school, like pilotage. So I'm just barely making it, you know, trying to like avoid Detroit's airspace, get it back to him. And like, I had my maps and everything tucked under, you know, like in a T6, if you drop it, it's way down in the frame in the floor. There's no way you're getting it back. So I drop my map. I don't even know the frequencies. It's like, what the hell? And next thing, this Mustang jumps my ass, and it's Roush. Yeah, that's the people here and Bud, and because Bud's the real deal. You know, the finest compliment I think you can offer somebody is they're a real fighter pilot for people who are fighter pilots. You think so? I do. And so, you know, he's the real deal, and he's got some terrific stories, and every year we can listen to his sort of truth about the war. It's a good thing. Now, I told Connie that I was going to talk just a little bit about, you know, COVID's been a weird thing for flying. So my airplane's been down in Stuart, Florida for a while, went through annual, haven't flown it. I wanted to do some checkout work before I brought it up here, which was today. Had a board meeting yesterday I had to do. And the comm core didn't work, and like so I haven't flown it in like probably 6 months, you know. And like I got to go to Oshkosh and then fly formation and do all this stuff. And you know, so I get a little nervous. You know, you hop into a 1,700 horsepower airplane from 1944, and you know, it's one of those things you got to think about when you crank it up and put the power on. And there was like big ass thunderstorms here, so which I was trying to beat in this morning. And so I get a little nervous, and I look at all the speeds and everything. And the thing is, the Mustang is just the most honest airplane ever. You know, it's scary. I know people get hurt in the airplane, but it really talks back. That's kind of what I wanted to tell you guys, is that, you know, if you listen to the airplane, it's just a really sweet airplane to fly. It'll do pretty much everything. If you try to stall it out, I don't know. Hopefully, there's a bunch of aviators here. You know, you can depart it. It'll kick back. You know, the Mustang will bite you if you let it. But it's just a really sweet airplane to fly. And Ray's got a lot of experience flying other planes, but the support system that keeps me alive are kind of sitting right here. Jack maintains my engine. A friend down in Florida does the airframe. Connie and her late husband Ed really introduced me and took care of me, because whether it's flying here or like Super Cubs in Idaho and Utah, it's pretty technical flying, and I that's the one thing I would say about flying fighters is it's technical, and I like that part of flying, that it's technical. But if you're going to be doing technical flying, you need people who can give you advice, who've learned kind of the bad habits that could get you hurt. And these people here, I really owe my life to, including Ray. So, I was a F-16 kid. I graduated college at Riddle, ROTC. I was probably one of the first 10 lieutenants. This is 1981. Into the F-16 for 7 years. And that's a pretty sweet airplane to fly, too, I think. It's really the first airplane where you could focus outside the airplane, and the airplane was kind of programmed not to kill you. We had a couple problems early on when I was in, where the flight controls went bad, and it just negative G'd over after a generator failure. And a lot of people got killed out at Hill, where I was my first duty station. But I've been very lucky to fly sweet airplanes and be with great people, and I think that's really it. This is an airplane you can get into, and if you have some basic flying skills, and you kind of remember the basics, you go through a good training program like Louderback runs down at Stallion, and you hang around with people who can keep the airplane functional, and then you fly Oshkosh. Just another quickie on Oshkosh. Oshkosh is really the only place where I flew 3 times today. Twice up here we were 4-ship. Ray's our leader, and he's a fabulous leader, but nobody's really flying Mustangs the way they get flown up here. So you come up here, and it's really military-style, multi-ship airplanes, and we do some training. And I don't know, Ray, you want to talk about like what your objectives are when we fly?
Absolutely. Obviously, welcome back to Oshkosh, and we're all thrilled to be here and thrilled to be back at Warbirds in Review. Nowhere in the world do you get to see what we see, and what you don't see is when we leave the airport to go with these airplanes. And like he said, it is training, because very rarely, most air shows you go. I mean, how often do you go to an air show and see a single P-51 or a single Corsair, or certainly some of the rare airplanes out here? You just don't see them. So when we get to go as a 4-ship or sometimes 8-ship and beyond, it's amazing. So we get to come and go pretty much, whereas a lot of airplanes, they get to Oshkosh and they're like, man, I'm just glad I made it here. And the airplane's in one piece, and then they enjoy the show. We pretty much get a chance to go very early in the morning, so when a lot of people are still sleeping. This guy's a madman. I don't think he sleeps past like 3 o'clock in the morning on any given day. So I have to make myself get out of bed. But we usually brief at 5:30 in the morning, and we're turning props here at 6 o'clock in the morning to go fly, which is pure airspace for us to go play. If you're camping out here, you've probably heard the Mustangs wake you up many times in the morning.
Now, this morning, I did want to fly before they did, but Roush refuses to let people fly his airplane because they'll, at 200 knots, it'll start taking the paint off the spinner and the prop. But, so we had to wait till Roush said it was safe for his propeller.
However, when you look at the faux crow, look how beautiful the paint is on the leading edges and the props versus... So it does make a big difference. So we do everything we can to keep these airplanes, hence the keep them preserved. And when they're preserved, obviously, they're... they are show planes, so we do try to take care of them. So we only had to delay for 20 minutes, 30 minutes this morning. But we still had an amazing sortie. We go out, we do pitch outs, rejoins. We get to go with some of the younger people that are really new to the profession. And there's so many moving parts. I know all of you guys, you wouldn't be here if you're not enthusiasts. These airplanes fly because Jack, keeps the engines running in top shape, which is amazing. when we climb in these airplanes, you think about, really what what your responsibility is to get the airplane back in one piece versus putting it in a museum. So to both Jack and to Jim and to everybody here that really keeps airplanes flying, because every year I think for the past decade, and I know Connie's done it, we've delivered airplanes to museums where they silence them and they never fly again. They either hang them from a ceiling or they sit there. And it's like going to the Dayton Museum. You see an amazing number of airplanes or Smithsonian. You know what they did. You know what they did for our freedoms and for for everyone, but you'll never see them fly again. So to come up here to see them fly, to be involved. We also give rides. So Tower Controller got a ride this morning with which was pretty amazing to go fly in the back seat of the airplane, and they get to see it from their end because they're obviously working very hard too. But again, we hope to continue to wake you guys up in the morning.
You got your own mic.
Now, I did take Ray's kid up, and he didn't say anything, but he looked kind of aroused when he got out of the airplane, dude.
My 16-year-old son got a chance to fly this morning with Jim, so obviously I trust all these guys. How much time do you have in the Mustang, Jack? You actually flew the Mustang to races, didn't you? It was like your daily driver to go to NASCAR races. So you've got to probably have more.
I
Mustang
got an
time.
excess of 1,100 hours.
So 1,100 hours in a P-51. So that is incredible in itself. So just the resources that we get to be around up here is unbelievable. So with that, I'm going to leave it to Jack because he's the most important and most interesting guy up here.
I got a couple of cleanup items on Jim here.
I bet you do.
First thing I want to say is I'm going to suck up a little bit. The seats you're sitting in, if you're sitting in the grass you're sitting on, if you're in the grass. The airplanes are sitting on a tarmac here that Jim provided, but he's been the best friend over the last 15 years of his involvement with the Old Crow. And that's we appreciate that, and without that, this event wouldn't be what it's been for so many of us for the last 20 years, at least the last 15 years. The Crow was one of the first airplanes that Bud Anderson flew in his first tour. He had 3 airplanes he flew, 3 B model airplanes like this green one that he flew, and they were his favorite airplanes. The last one was the one he had the most time with. Every day when the airplane was in maintenance, it flew in the first tour. They didn't have enough Merlin-equipped high-altitude airplanes, and they were determined to put the whoop-ass on the Luftwaffe before they invaded Normandy. And they accomplished that because I don't think anybody was on the ground on D-Day saw an airplane that didn't have the black and white stripes on the bottom of it, either a C-47 or a Mustang. Unfortunately, 2 of the airplanes that Bud flew in his first tour were lost with other pilots in the airplane. They were shot down or they had a problem, a collision or something. I don't know if they knew what happened to both of them, but the replication that I've got of the Crow is the 3rd airplane that he flew, which is the granddaddy of the D model that followed it, just so we're clear.
I can't believe you let Jim tag it with the Crow and you're carrying that on.
We've had a lot of fun with the airplanes, but the one thing that was unconscious to Jim, and he's mentioned it, but everybody in recent history that I've known that's been successful in a Mustang has gone through Ed and Connie Boland's approval process. Ed and Connie soloed me in their J3 Cub, which I had no tail dragger time. They soloed me in their T6, which was an incredible act of generosity. And they stood by me as I got prepared to make my first mistakes in a Mustang. And they said, well, don't do that. Said, you're thinking about doing this, don't do this. And Ed taught me actually to dogfight a little bit. And when he was teaching me dogfight, one of the things you have to do when you're in a Mustang is you got to advance the propeller so that the engine doesn't detonate when you advance the throttle. And so I burned a piston and didn't make it back to Detroit one day after I'd been dogfighting with Ed in Mississippi or in Alabama. And Jim come lumbering in with his airplane one day. He says, I want you to check this airplane over. And so I checked it over, and he hadn't burned through the piston, but he burned a part of the piston away. And it was talking to him. It was telling him, we're not happy.
Hey, hold on a sec. I did detonate it, okay? So, like, I was flying at a higher power sort of propeller pitch combo than Jack would have recommended.
Approved.
But let me tell you about we flew that airplane all summer, and we were changing mags. It was running just a little bit rough. We had burned through, I don't know how many rings. There's 4 or 5 rings.
There's 3 rings, and you had 2 of them to completely fail. The only thing that was intact was the oil ring.
We pulled the oil filter off, and it just looked like silver talcum powder in there. And we flew it all summer like that. Ed was flying it. Jack was flying it. Like, why is it running rough? And that tells you a little bit how sturdy these engines can be.
And I looked and saw what he'd done. I says, I'm going to tell you what you did. And so I recounted to him how he had gotten behind with his advancement of his RPM when he was advancing the manifold pressure. And I'm sure Ed Boland must have done the same thing, because I wasn't there when he and Connie had their airplanes, but they had some maintenance trouble with it too. So they were probably writing the book that the gospel that they preached to me, what I preached to Jim. But there's when you come into the Mustang community today, there's a cadre of experienced people that are ready to protect you protect the airplane from you and protect you from yourself. And there's a great debt of gratitude that's owed to the people that have kept the faith and keep us informed and keep us safe. I was just the next one in line for Jim, unfortunately. Looking at what my prepared notes are, do you have anything further to say on that, Jim? Do you have any cleanups, Ray?
I got to say, I love Jack, and Jack is one of my best buds, and so that's all, Jack. He sent me a note a couple days ago saying, take a look at my lawn. It looks so damn good.
I sent him a picture of my lawn. He sent me down. He's a dandelion killer too, but that's another story. But I was getting ready to solo him in my T6 to send it down to Maryville with him, and down to Columbus, Ohio with him. And we flew over this gorgeous cross runway grass field that was just eaten up with dandelions. He couldn't wait to get on the ground and try to have a conversation with the guy that owned it to see if he'd let him kill those dandelions. He sent tanker loads of liquid dandelion fertilizer to...
we sent a whole truckload of Turf Builder Plus 2 to deal with that.
So if you have a grass strip and you let Jim Hagedorn fly over it, you may just have a dandelion program waiting for you.
Okay. Ray, did you have something you wanted to defend yourself or somebody?
It is funny whenever Jack talks about the people kind of reel them in and reel stuff in. However, both of these guys, if you've seen the pictures of the P-51s flying in the contrails in the 35,000, a lot of people don't know the P-51 is certified to 41,000 feet. And actually holds a record right now with another guy that went to 43,000 feet. But Jack went up just to get pictures in the contrails, which is pretty spectacular picture. But then some other guy came up with an idea about flying the P-51 across the North Atlantic for the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And fortunately, Jack was stabbing his voodoo doll for that one, and everything actually was working against us for that trip. But these guys do so much for aviation, and just to bring the airplanes to the public. And a lot of
I was
people
thinking
just don't
about
know
that today, Ray, when I was flying across the lake. Was what happens if I go down? That one, we had exposure suits on, survival vests on. You had to carry a vest or a raft in your lap. It was going to be quite a trip.
Yeah, we don't recommend flying over the Lake Michigan unless you're less than 23,000 feet at the peak of it, or center of it, in which case you could coast to land or drift.
And you remember what you told me, right? About if you had to go get your airplane, what you'd rather use? Yeah,
I'd rather use a rowback to pick it up rather than something to get it out of the water. Rather than a crane to get it out of the water.
So I will add, Ray and I are fortunate to fly these airplanes, and when we fly Jack's airplane and he says don't fly across the lake, we go around.
And Jim went around this morning, so he is trainable.
That was because of the thunderstorms, dude.
Small price to pay. The fact that there is a P-51 Mustang for us to celebrate today was really an unlikely result of what was going on at the beginning of World War II. In April of 1940, the British Air Commission, Purchasing Commission, came over to negotiate a contract between North American Aviation, who was making B-25s and T-6s that were high quality and good value to the governments that had them. And they wanted the North American to accept a license to join an agreement with Curtiss to produce a P-40. And the North American people figured that the P-40 was already obsolete. Except for the things that they did with it in China with the dive through the formations. You couldn't turn with a Zero or with a number of the other Japanese airplanes with a P-40. And that's what they were faced with as the things got hot in Europe. That's what they were going to face over there as well with the ME-109. So Edgar Schumid was actually born in Germany, was the chief design engineer at the North American, and he'd been investigating something called the laminar flow wing that the Russians and the Japanese had. The Russians and the Japanese had written some papers about, and he also had an idea that it needed to be a V-12 cross section and need to have the radiator scoop as far aft as it could, so that it would not generate more drag than necessary. And they actually configured the radiator, which is and the scoop on the bottom of the airplanes, so that the inlet and exhaust generated were so configured that they generated thrust. And the claim was made that the amount of thrust they generated offset the drag that they put on the airplane. I've not flown a Mustang without a scoop, so I can't swear that I have that impression. But the wing design was coordinated with the research group of government people, the NACA, and it was reportedly 50% less drag than a conventional wing like the other fighters had. They were going to use flush rivets throughout, and they made an agreement to produce a flying prototype in 120 days of this new design. And for that accommodation, the Purchasing Commission had issued a purchase order for how many was it? For about 400 airplanes, and 102 days versus 120, the airframe was finished, and the government was in control of the engine supply, the V6, the V12, 60-degree V12 Allison engine, and also the guns and the brakes. And they held the U.S. Army military or aviation establishment held back on prioritizing an Allison engine away from the production for the P-40 and for the P-38s. They took 18 days to get them an engine. The airplane was encouraging. It could do about what the Spitfire could do, maybe a little better at low altitude, certainly not a lot better. It carried more fuel and so it had more endurance, which came into play later. And the other thing that was going on is that not only did they need airframes, they needed to have an engine, a 60-degree V12 engine that they could use in their Spitfires and in their other military airplanes that the British was using the engine in. But looking at the Merlin, which they eventually issued a license to Packard Motor Car Company, was building cars. In August of 1940, the engine had 14,000 parts, which an automobile for the day had about 7,000 parts, and it weighed 1,700 pounds. Looking at the factory that built the engines, they burned 80,000 gallons of gasoline a day in testing. They prepared the engines for service in Europe with an initial 6-hour break-in, which we do in our rebuild operation today. They disassembled it and checked critical things, and they put 5 hours more on it before they put it in a box and sent it to Europe. So it had 11 hours. I don't think anybody ever took a Merlin engine out of a can and put it in service and had trouble with it. They were trouble-free. But the Army Air Corps had the Pratt & Whitney 2800s that they used in the Corsair that they planned to put in other airplanes, which they did only in the Hellcat and in the Thunderbolt. So they were pretty happy with those airplanes, and if they needed more endurance, more distance, they had the P-38, which had two of the more efficient Allison 1710 cubic inch V12s. Looking at the airplane, let me talk one more thing about the engines. From 1939 to 1956, there were 170,000 so-called Merlin engines built that were put in military service or were used for air freighting operations after the war. From the 3 years from 1943 to 1945, under this license, the Packard Motor Car Company built 85,000 engines, which was half of what was produced for the type over 16 years. Looking at the airplane that they put the engine in, there was it was 7,400 pounds dry. It was average loaded for combat was 11,500 pounds. There were less than 4,000 of the Bs and the Cs that the green airplane is a B. The B model airplanes were built in Anaheim, California, and the Cs were built in Dallas, Texas. There were 15,874 airplanes built. To put that into context, there was 20,351 Spitfires, 30,480 Me-109s, and 36,000 Russian Stormoviks. So at 15,800 airplanes, that's less than 2% of the 276,000 U.S. manufactured airplanes that served in the war. Just add a sobering thought at the end of it. From Pearl Harbor until the Japanese surrendered in August of 45, there were 170 aircraft lost for every day of that time frame. And there were 220,000 U.S. airmen that lost their lives as well. Who's going to read the...
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to point out that the Gentleman Jim airplane, I spoke of the Old Crow aircraft, but I'd like to give you a little background on the Gentleman Jim. That airplane Jack named for Bud's best friend who was killed in World War II, so he's one of these casualties that you would speak of. He was from Kansas. Again, one of Bud's best friends, and Jim named his son, or Bud named his son Jim after Jim Browning, who was Gentleman Jim aircraft pilot in World War II. And Jack, I want to say thank you not only for being here, but for maintaining these airplanes and for what you do for the entire Warbird community with your research and development and your aircraft engines. So, yes, very appropriate.
It's been my pleasure. Jim Browning, like Bud Anderson, had volunteered for a second tour. And unlike Bud, who finished the second tour unscathed, Jim was he was a couple of months behind Jim, so after Bud had left theater, Jim stayed on to finish his tour. And he was on his third to last mission. And at this point in the war, it was the death days of the German war machine. They decided to send up the Me-262s to dogfight the Germans, to dogfight the Mustangs. And a Mustang will turn inside of an Me-262. Me-262 should not dogfight a Mustang because you got to reduce the power and reduce the speed to keep it from stalling the higher stressed wing. And so anyway, they quickly shot down 2 of the 4 Me-262s. The leader, who was a very famous German ace, was flying of the 262s, went head-to-head with Browning. Neither one of them flinched, and they both were killed. And more recently, in the last 5 years, Jim Browning went over and as the records of where the pilots were that were killed and where the crash sites were. He went over to the crash site for Jim Browning's airplane, and with the help of the people that were witnessed the day that they crashed, he brought me back some parts of the airplane that I've got in my souvenir case.
That's pretty cool. Again, thank you, Jack, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We have Colonel Anderson, as promised. He's been listening to all this. I'm sure enjoying it, as I hope you have. I'm sure you have. It's hot out here, so I'm going to go inside the production room, and I'm going to ask Ray Fowler. By the way, Ray, thanks for being a part of this also. Ray's going to read a little bit of a summary on Bud arriving in England. I'm going to go in and speak with Colonel Anderson. Again, you'll be able to see him on the Jumbotron. Following that, we have another pre-recorded interview with Bud. So if you can stand the heat, I think it'll be worth it. But thank you again all for being here. Jack, thanks for being here. And we'll continue as I go inside to talk to Bud.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Connie. And Colonel C.E. Bud Anderson arrived in Leiston, England in December 1943 for his assignment in the European Theater of Operations, just in time for two important occurrences that would shape the outcome of World War II. First was the change in strategy of the 8th Air Force regarding the engagement of enemy aircraft. As a fighter pilot, he was now to be charged with pursuing and destroying the enemy before they were able to threaten the bomber missions to the German homeland. Second was the receipt of the high-altitude, long-range P-51 B and C model Mustangs, which made possible the near destruction of the Luftwaffe prior to Operation Overlord. Accordingly, Bud successfully completed 2 combat tours in which he destroyed 16 and one-quarter aircraft while suffering no combat damage and no mechanical issues resulting in incomplete missions. Note that of 28 pilots that were assigned to the 357th Fighter Group, 363rd Squadron, 14 were either killed in action against the enemy or taken prisoner, an alarming 50% casualty rate. In doing so, they inflicted a 5-to-1 kill ratio against their German foes. His squadron mate, Chuck Rieger, perhaps put it best when he referenced Bud years later, the best fighter pilot I've ever seen, my good friend, Colonel Bud Anderson.
Well, good morning, Bud. It's morning in California, and welcome to Warbirds in Review.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say I like to Teresa for her wonderful songs. And I want to say good morning to all of the fans in there.
Thank you. And they all miss you, but we are so thankful that you've been here for the last 20 years, and we look forward to seeing you next year. So I see the perfect P-51 pictures in the background there. You're getting accustomed to the Zoom calls as we go into this wind down, we hope, of the COVID year.
That's right.
Yeah. So we have some of the favorite stories, as I'm sure you heard me. We have Gentleman Jim on the stage and the 2 Old Crows. I enjoyed hearing Hagedorn and Jack go back and forth, bantering back and forth. I'm sure you did, knowing the 2 very well.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, and so let's go with a story we all like to hear, if we've had the pleasure of hearing before. Your first mission or your first kill, I guess, would be a better, description. Yeah,
that it has a little bit of humor in it, so it's pretty good too. We're just getting started, and we're starting to get kills, and I haven't got one yet, and the other guys are starting to get them. And I'm kind of wondering, am I cut out for this or not? And so we're out there. I think it was back toward Berlin. And we were on a relay system then, and we were relieved and we're going home. And I'm leading a flight of 3 or 4 Mustangs. And another flight joined me, came up, pulled up alongside of us. And I noticed it was a 362nd Squadron. And so we're heading on back, and they pull in alongside of us. And I see up ahead, way up ahead, down low, a B-17. And he's kind of a straggler. And he's trying to go home by himself. And he has a couple engines smoking bad. So I tell the guys, hey, come on, let's go down there and take him out to the water at least. And so we make a left turn and start down towards him. And all of a sudden, here comes 3 ME-109s. They're coming along here like this, diving down to attack him. Obviously didn't see us because there was 7 or 8 Mustangs. So I said, okay, guys, one of those Mustangs is mine. So we cut them off the pass. And I start to get into a turning dog fight with ME-109. There were not good concentric circles. I was coming at him on a high angle off like that. And he's coming at me at a high angle off. You really can't get a good shot. So I'm wondering, why can't I get on this guy's tail? You know, I learned later that down at low altitude in the hands of a good pilot, an ME-109 could give a Mustang a hard time. So I'm thinking, I'd been through a lot of gunnery schools. I knew how to shoot. And I think, the next time I come around on this guy, here's he is, and here I am. A high angle off like that. I'm going to pull my nose very steadily right through him, get out here to an estimated lead. I won't be able to even see him, and fire a burst and see if he might fly through the bullets. So he comes around. I get in there real good, pull through him steadily, fire the burst. And when he comes flying through, he's smoking. But his coolant, I hit him in the coolant because it's a gray smoke coming all out of the airplane. Hot dog, I got this guy. And he pulls up like this, just rolls over inverted and bailed out. And I'm sitting there kind of cheering to myself. And I had a feeling that, oh my God, I looked over here. Here's a guy right up on my wing. And it was Johnny England from the other squadron. He already had a couple of victories. Johnny England, England Air Force Base in Louisiana. That's the guy that the base was named after. So, we still have about 2 hours to go. And I said, I wonder if he shot that airplane down out from under me. You know, could he have been back here shooting at that thing? And I didn't see him. Wouldn't be very sportsmanlike, but there's a war going on, so I guess that's okay. And so we still we're heading back to home now. Took the B-17 out to the water, and by the time we got out over the channel, I'd convinced myself that, you know, I probably really didn't shoot that airplane down. I'll bet you Johnny England got it out from under me, and when he pulled up alongside of me down there, he had his mask off because we were down low, and he was grinning like, you know what. And then he gave me a sign sort of like this. You know, it could have been, hey, bud, congratulations. Or could have been, hey, look what I did. I didn't know. So I got back. We got back and we went into intelligence, and we were doing the debriefing and everything. And I asked my guys, I said, did you see me shoot that guy down? And they were all saying, no, I was out of position. I couldn't see it. Sir saw him after he started smoking and then bailing, you know, when he bailed out. But they couldn't confirm my kill. So I claimed a kill, and I told the intelligence officer I had to go talk to another pilot to get confirmation. So we're going. We always went to the club after a combat mission, and so I'm driving over there to the building where the officers club is, and I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to bring this up to him? I'm going to say, hey, you jerk, did you shoot that airplane down from under me, or how's this going to work? And so we get over to the club, and I'm walking in, and he's right on the end of the bar. And he comes running over to me, and he says, Andy, he says, that was the greatest shot I ever saw. You must have got that guy out there about 60 degrees angle off. And I went like this, oh, Johnny, you know, lucky shot. And I rushed to the phone after we got through talking and claimed my first kill.
That's a great story, Bud, and thanks for sharing that with us. And I'm sure Johnny England never knew that you thought he might have shot that airplane out from under you, right? Never.
I never confessed.
What did it take 40 years before you confessed to that doubt? Okay, so as we transition, I know there's another story that's my favorite, and that's about your crew that supported you. So before I get you to tell that story, I'd like to get Scott, the producer, to switch to the producing room where we are, so you folks out front can see where I am. Scott Guyot on the far end here is the producer, and the entire Sleeping Dog crew. Their talent and professionalism makes this possible, and this room is unbelievable. It's always a pleasure to work with them. So with that transition, Bud, would you tell us about your crew? Because I'm very, very proud of the entire crew that makes Warbirds in Review possible.
Well, I selected my crew chief while we were in training, flying the old P-39s, old beat-up P-39s. And they were pretty crummy airplanes. And, you know, the gun sight is right here and right up against the armor glass there. and the combining glass is so close that you can't keep it clean. And so Otto came to me one time there. He says, "Hey, what could I do to this airplane to make it better for you?" And I said, "Well, you know, Otto," I told him about the gun sight and the dust and crud. It's right in the center of your vision, too. And I figured you'd probably have to take the gun sight out, clean it up, clean the windshield, and put it back in. If you did that, you'd have to refire the guns at the firing pits, recite the gun to the actual point in space. And so I knew it was work intensive. And I came back in the morning and I was going to fly again. And I came out here and I looked at this windshield and gun sight are just crystal clear. I said, "Otto, how'd you do that?" He said, "Oh, I got a turkey feather and I was able to get around it and clean it out and everything." He was pretty ingenious. They would change the spark plugs on the P-51 every mission. And the ones on the inside of the V are very difficult to get to. And we had reconditioned plugs and we had brand new plugs in the supply. Well, Otto went over to Air Corps Supply and found another Finnish guy. And he says, "Hey, you separate these things and keep the brand new plugs for me, for my airplane." And it's just incredible what they would think of. But the thing I would really want to tell you about is my second tour. I had a brand new D model, P-51D. I've been flying a B up until now. And I got most of my kills in a B with a fixed sight. Well, it was camouflaged to the dark green all over. Now, my second tour started in the fall of '44, and we had quit worrying about what they were painted like. We had silver, all aluminum paint schemes, all dark camo, and we had mixed airplanes, half and half. So and we're not thinking too much about whether you're camouflaged or not. Spring of 1944 is when we broke the back of the roof off. And it was, I don't know, it just seemed like, now that I think about it, we didn't see as many airplanes. And they weren't as skilled either. So we're on this mission, and the first big snow had hit Germany. It just blanketed it. And so you could pretty well figure we're going to have snow from now on. I'm going to finish my tour in the winter. So I'm looking down at the snow, and there's two camouflaged airplanes flying and two natural aluminum airplanes. Well, which one stuck out the most? The one that was camouflaged. So when I got back, Otto had been promoted, and he was a line chief now. He had 6 airplanes to look after. But he was always there to see me off, and he was always there when I returned. And he handpicked my new crew chief. So when I got back, they were all there. Otto, my new crew chief, and my armor. And they want to know what happened, what was going on. I said, well, there wasn't no enemy airplanes. But let me tell you, I was looking at these camouflaged airplanes against the snow, and I was looking at the silver airplanes against the snow. Now I knew I was going to finish in the winter. So I mentioned that it sure would be nice if you could depaint my airplane when it was laid up for heavy maintenance. I figured it'd take a couple of days and put it in the natural aluminum paint scheme. So they acknowledged my request, and I left. I was the operations officer then. I said, I think I'll go fly tomorrow. Next minute, put my name on the board. And went home and didn't think about it much after that. But in the morning, I got my breakfast, and we got our big briefing over in headquarters for the mission. And then I went down to our squadron. And my airplane was right next to the operations building in a revetment. And so I could walk out to it. I didn't have to wait for the truck. So I thought I'd go out a little early, maybe talk to the guys. I had to I climb up over the revetment, and I'm up on top looking down. My God, there's a pristine aluminum Old Crow. Those guys had started working on it the moment that I left the afternoon before, worked straight through the night and had it ready to go, but in a natural aluminum paint scheme. They were kind of standing there half at attention and kind of grinning. And I thought about it. I said, good God, did those guys think, did I give them a direct order to depaint that airplane that night? And then I thought about it a little bit. No, that was a way they could make their contribution to the war effort. You know, they were over there, but they weren't doing the dime. And they just wanted to please us so bad. They just would do anything for you. And that's kind of the way support was. I can't remember being short anything over there. That would include cigarettes and whiskey, if you want to call that as a necessity. And I can't say enough about the crew chiefs of the world. And if you guys have crew chiefs, pat them in the back once in a while. They really appreciate that.
Thank you, Bud. As usual, that's always a heartfelt story, and we always enjoy hearing that. And it doesn't matter if it's keeping the airplanes going or any support crew, as we have here at Warbirds in Review. I know that you have your daughter Kitty there with you, who is your support crew to help us hook up this Zoom today. So our thanks to Kitty and your son Jim that's normally here with you, and to all the volunteers. I say once again, And we do have another video to show that was pre-recorded that the Sleeping Dog Productions also did for the Arsenal of Democracy. But we won't hold you on board. I know you know what you say. So you've been on the Zoom for quite a while, and we really appreciate you, Bud, more than you will ever know. And I will tell the people here in the audience that we have your book. Although you're not here to sign it in person, you have signed the books and have sent them to Warbirds, so they are available over in merchandise. So if you people out there would like to buy what I think is the best book of reflections of World War II, it's To Fly and Fight by Colonel Bud Anderson, and they are signed over in the bookstore here at Warbirds. And Bud, thank you for being here. We love you, and we'll see you next year. And all the best. Do you have anything else you want to say closing, or how are you doing?
You said I'll be there next year.
Absolutely. As I've heard you say before, I'm glad to be here, but at this age, I'm glad to be anywhere. So we're glad you're anywhere and sharing your time with us. So we love you.
Thank you.